What began as a peaceful afternoon in the park quickly turned into a police incident. A father's love and a child's innocence would soon face a challenge shaped by deep-rooted prejudice. And, in a way no one expected, it was a warm Sunday in Greenfield Park, Ohio, the kind of day when families filled the picnic spots, kids giggled on swings, and couples walked slowly beneath the tall, shady oak trees. Among the many smiling faces was a man named Darren and his 6-year-old daughter, Emma. He had packed a simple lunch: peanut butter sandwiches, sliced apples, and a thermos filled with lemonade. They sat together on an old blue blanket, spread across the grass, laughing, as Emma excitedly talked about what she wanted to do in first grade. Darren was the kind of dad who always made time for small moments. His warm laugh and the way he listened made Emma feel like the most important person in the world. Today was no different. He gently tugged her little braid as she showed him a loose tooth, her bright blue eyes shining with excitement. Not far away, an older woman sat alone on a bench, watching them closely. Darren noticed her for a second but didn't think much of it. He was used to people staring. Being a black father to a white daughter often brought curious looks. Sometimes they smiled kindly, but other times, like today, their looks said something else. Still, Darren ignored it. He focused on Emma, who had just spotted the playground. "Can I go?" she asked, already halfway up. "Go ahead," Darren said with a chuckle, "but stay where I can see you." She ran off happily, and he leaned back to enjoy the moment, not knowing the woman on the bench had just dialed 911. But peaceful moments don't always last, and Darren was about to be caught in something that would change everything. Emma's laughter rang through the air as she climbed the jungle gym. Her pink sneakers swung back and forth as she moved from bar to bar. Darren watched her the whole time, his eyes calm but focused. He always kept a close watch because he knew the world wasn't always kind to families like his. On the bench, the woman lowered her phone after a quiet chat with the dispatcher. Her mouth was pressed into a tight line. As she stood up and started walking toward the playground, her steps were firm, her face set in an expression Darren knew too well, a mix of suspicion hidden under concern. She stopped near the jungle gym and raised her voice, loud enough to be heard over the noise of playing kids. "Excuse me," she said to Emma. "Where's your mommy?" Emma froze, grabbing the metal bar tightly. "I'm here with my dad," she said sweetly, pointing to Darren, who was already getting up. He walked closer, his brow furrowed as he tried to figure out what was going on. "Is there a problem?" he asked, calm but serious. The woman turned to him, her eyes filled with silent judgment. "I was just checking," she replied, her voice full of fake concern. "You don't look related." Darren sighed, feeling his patience wear thin. "She's my daughter," he said clearly. Emma, sensing something was wrong, climbed down and ran over, holding her father's hand tightly. The woman didn't stop. "Well, you can't be too careful these days," she muttered, glancing at Emma like she was looking for signs of distress. Darren bent down to Emma's level and spoke softly. "Why don't you grab your water bottle? Sweetheart, I'll be right here." Emma nodded, her little face now worried, and walked back to their blanket. The woman crossed her arms, standing firm. "You must understand why this looks strange," she said, her voice dropping. "A man like you with a child like her." Darren stood up straight, his jaw tightening. A dad spending time with his daughter shouldn't look strange, he said evenly, not letting her words shake him. But before anything else could be said, the sound of sirens cut through the calm park air. Darren's heart sank. The woman's eyes flicked toward the parking lot, a small, satisfied smile forming. But Darren knew this was only the beginning, and he had to stay strong for Emma. The sirens got louder, drawing everyone's attention. People stopped talking. Parents pulled their kids close. As 2 police cars pulled up near the playground, Darren stood still, calm on the outside but guarded. Emma sat on the blanket, holding her water bottle tightly, her wide eyes moving back and forth between her dad and the flashing police lights. Two officers got out of the patrol car, one man and one woman. Their faces were serious, though they kept a professional look. The woman who had made the call walked over to them right away, pointing in Darren's direction as she spoke in a low voice. Darren couldn't hear what she was saying, but he already knew what it was about. He took a deep breath to steady himself, reminding himself to stay calm. The male officer came over first, his hand resting lightly on his belt. "Sir, can we have a word?" he asked. His voice was polite but firm. The female officer stayed back, her eyes scanning the area, as if checking for signs of danger. Darren nodded. "Of course," he replied, keeping his voice steady. He looked at Emma and gave her a small, reassuring nod. She didn't move. She sat frozen on the blanket, holding her water bottle like it was the only safe thing around her. The officer quickly began asking questions, each one testing Darren's patience. "What's your name? What are you doing here? Who is the child?" Darren answered each one clearly, trying to stay calm even as frustration started to rise. "She's my daughter," he said firmly, looking straight into the officer's eyes. "Her name is Emma. We come here every weekend." The officer glanced back at the woman, who was now standing next to the female cop, still waving her hands and talking with energy. "We got a call about a possible abduction," the officer said, a bit of doubt in his voice. "The caller said the child doesn't seem to be related to you." Darren felt a tightness in his chest, but he refused to let anger take over. "She's adopted," he explained calmly. "She's been my daughter since the day she was born. There's no issue here, just a dad spending time with his child." Emma, picking up on the tension, got up and walked over to Darren. "Daddy?" she whispered, her voice shaking a little. The officer looked down at her, and for a moment his face softened, but the woman jumped in again. "Just check his story," she insisted, her voice louder now. "You can't be too careful." The female officer stepped closer. "We'll need to see some identification, sir," she said, her voice more neutral than before. Darren nodded. He moved slowly, carefully, and pulled out his wallet. "This is my driver's license," he said, handing it over. "And this," he added, reaching into his bag with calm, steady hands, "is a copy of Emma's adoption papers." He passed a folded document to the officers. They exchanged a quick look, then began reviewing the documents. The woman stood off to the side, arms crossed, a smug look on her face. Darren kept his focus on Emma, who now held on to his leg, as if she could feel how upset he was inside. But Darren knew the truth would speak for itself. He just had to prove, once again, that he was her father, and that their love was real. The female officer carefully opened the adoption papers, reading through them while her partner checked Darren's ID. The seconds crawled by slowly, each one feeling longer than the last. Darren stood completely still, his heart beating fast, but his face calm and unreadable. Emma looked up at him and whispered, "Are we in trouble, Daddy?" He bent down and gently ran his hand over her hair. "No, sweetheart," he said softly. "We're not in trouble." Finally, the female officer looked up. Her expression had changed. The stiffness in her face gave way to something softer. "Everything checks out," she said, handing back the papers. "I'm sorry for the trouble, Mr. Johnson." The male officer nodded. "Thank you for cooperating. It's clear everything is fine." The woman who made the call stepped forward again, her voice rising. "You're just going to let it go? Look at them. Doesn't this seem strange to you?" The female officer's tone turned firm. "Ma'am, the documents are valid. There is no issue here." Darren let out a slow breath. He was relieved, but he didn't let his guard down just yet. "I understand your concern," he said, turning to the woman. "But assuming things like this can cause real harm, my daughter shouldn't feel unsafe, just because our family doesn't look the way some people expect." Emma still held on to him tightly. "I love my daddy," she said softly. "He's the best." Her little voice cut through the quiet in the park, and something in the air changed. The tension cracked. The woman who had called the police paused. Her angry look faded into something else. Maybe guilt. She looked down at the ground, her shoulders slumping a bit. People who had gathered nearby began to talk quietly again. Some looked at Darren with sympathy, others with embarrassment. One by one, the crowd slowly turned back to their lunches and conversations. The moment had passed, but for Darren, the damage was already done. Emma's question, "Are we in trouble?" stayed with Darren, a painful reminder of how quickly peace can be shattered. The officers walked back to their patrol cars. Before leaving, the female officer paused and said, "I hope you and your daughter have a good rest of your day." Darren gave her a small nod, grateful for her attempt to end things kindly, though the damage had already been done. Even as the police drove away, Darren knew the hardest part was still ahead, explaining to Emma why it happened at all. As the cars disappeared around the curve, Darren noticed how the mood in the park had shifted. People were talking again, but there was a strange tension in the air. Many avoided eye contact, their discomfort just as clear, as the warm sunlight pouring through the trees. Turning his attention to Emma, Darren knelt down beside her. "Hey, kiddo," he said softly. "You okay?" Emma's big blue eyes stared into his, full of questions she didn't yet know how to ask. Why did that lady think we're not family? She whispered, her small hands nervously twisting her shirt. Darren paused, carefully choosing his words. "Sometimes people don't understand things that are different from what they're used to," he explained. "But being different doesn't mean anything's wrong. We know we're a family. That's what matters most." Emma nodded slowly, trying to make sense of it all, something Darren wished she didn't have to deal with so young. Just then, a couple on a nearby blanket got up and walked over, their young son trailing behind. "Hey," the man said a little awkwardly. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry for what happened. That wasn't right." His wife added, "Your daughter is lucky to have you. You handled that better than most would." Darren gave them a small smile. "Thanks," he said. "I just hope next time people stop and think before jumping to conclusions." As they walked away, others who passed offered soft smiles and quiet nods, simple gestures, but they meant something. It didn't erase what had happened, but it reminded Darren that not everyone saw the world with the same narrow view. Eventually, the crowd started to thin, but the woman who made the call still sat on the bench, her eyes down, staring at her lap. Darren thought about going over, but decided against it. Her regret was clear, and nothing more needed to be said. "Daddy," Emma whispered, tugging on his sleeve, "can we go home now?" "Of course, sweetheart," he replied, gathering up their things. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder as they walked back to the car, feeling the weight of the day, but also the quiet strength that came from simply being her father. As they left the park, Darren made a promise to himself. He wouldn't carry this moment as anger, but as a lesson, a way to teach Emma, and maybe others, that love and understanding are stronger than bias or fear. The ride home was quiet. Emma looked out the window, lost in thought. Darren glanced at her through the mirror, wondering how to explain something so complex to someone so young. He decided to keep it simple. "Emma," he said gently, breaking the silence, "remember when we talk about kindness? How it's important to treat others with love, even when they don't always treat us the same." She nodded, still watching the trees pass by. "Like when you said being nice makes the world better?" "That's right," Darren said. "Today, that lady didn't understand us. She made a mistake, but we don't have to let her mistake change how we feel about our family." Emma turned to him. Her voice was small but strong. "I love our family. You're my dad. Nobody can change that." Darren smiled, his chest tightening with emotion. "And I love you more than anything." That night, as he tucked Emma into bed, she wrapped her arms around him tightly. "I think that lady needs to learn about kindness too," she said softly. "Maybe she does," Darren replied, "but what matters most is that you always remember who you are and how much you are loved." As he left her room, Darren reflected on everything. Yes, the day had been painful, but it had also been a chance to teach Emma about strength, love, and the power of compassion, even when facing ignorance. The next weekend, Darren and Emma returned to the park, bringing their familiar blue blanket. This time, they were met with friendly smiles. Some faces were familiar from the week before. The world hadn't changed overnight, but the small gestures gave Darren hope, because each moment of understanding, every act of kindness, is like planting a seed, one that can grow into something bigger. And as Darren watched Emma laughing on the swings, he knew those seeds start with families like theirs. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Let's challenge assumptions, spread kindness, and help create a world where every family feels seen, safe, and celebrated.